book lovers, and welcome to Bookmas Day 8. I'm excited for today's video because we're going to talk about winter book recommendations and also my winter TBR, although I will already tell you guys that it's not very long because I really want to let myself mood read and not think too much about a TBR. I still have some books though that I really want to get to in the winter time that we're going to talk about. But first I want to give you my winter recommendations, and again I have them grouped up in their genre. As a romance reader, I'm going to give you some really good romance recommendations, but I also have fantasy. I actually have paranormal romance recommendations. I have some really good thrillers. So let's start with the romances. So in winter, when I think about a romance that really fits, I want it to be heartwarming, I want it to be cozy, and obviously if it has like a wintry background, even better, but mainly it's like the feelings, the coziness that gives me the vibe that is more of like a wintry read. And I have one book that I would describe as my comfort book. It's definitely more of a slow burn, but because it's Marriage of Convenience, you do have a lot of forced proximity and you just see these two characters fall in love on page, and I feel like the book kind of shows more of a mundane plot. Like there's not a lot happening besides these characters falling in love, but it is so beautiful that to me this is just a comfort read. And I'm talking about Marriage for One by Ella Mays, and this is the cover with the guy, but it also has the alternative cover that is blue, so perfect for winter. And as I said, I think this book is just so heartwarming. I love their romance. If you like the trope that she gets sick and he has to comfort her, that is this book. This book gives you that in so much depth, and yeah, I would love to reread this book, and I think the perfect time for that is definitely the winter time because, as I said, like this is my comfort book. Next up is another very comfort, heartwarming book, and that is Love and Other Words by Christina Lauren. This is definitely a fan favorite, I think, and a lot of people have read it. But you know, if you want to reread it or read it for the first time, now's your time, because this book is one of the books that really gave me soulmate vibes, but not in a cringy way or in a forced way. It's just that these two people, because it's childhood friends to lovers, have also such a beautiful friendship, but it's also second chance. It definitely pulls on your heartstrings, but not in an awful way. Like I feel like this book doesn't shatter you like some other books might do. I really like this one, and I think it's popular for a very good reason. Then a book that is not a popular one that I want to recommend to you guys is Getting His Game Back by Gia de Cadenet. If I say that correctly, this is the book cover and her name. Sorry if I mispronounce it. I'm really bad when it comes to names. This book was maybe not my all-time favorite romance, but what I really appreciated in this book is the mental health representation. And in this one, it's the guy who struggles with it. It has to do with like seasonal depression, and I just think that this really depicted it so well, how you feel when you feel that way. I haven't seen anyone talk about it, so I wanted to give this book its little moment. Other than the mental health representation in this book, this romance is between Carlisle and Vanessa, and I think they meet in his barbershop and he cuts her hair and she's very unsure because he's white and obviously she's black, and because of like her hair that he could do a good job. And also when it comes to dating, she made very horrible experience dating white men. That's why she doesn't really want to date white men anymore. However, because they hit it off so well, she thinks about giving him a chance, but as I said, he struggles with a lot of internal stuff, and I think his story is that he used to be a basketball player, but he's not anymore because of an injury, if I'm correct. So she's unsure whether she should give him the chance, and I think you should give this book a chance. As I said, I have a lot of like heartwarming books here to recommend for your winter read, and the next one is Part of Your World by Abby Jimenez, and this is a special edition I am holding up here because currently my original cover that I read is with a friend because I recommended that book to her as well. And I actually gave this book to I think 3 of my girlfriends now, and they all had different tastes in books and all of them loved the book. So this tells you something. Like, I don't know what Abby Jimenez did with this book, like what she put in those pages, but I feel like you can't go wrong with this romance. And this is like opposites attract, but more that they're from like contrary worlds and it's just hard to fit. They have a one-night stand at the very beginning. He lives like 2 hours outside of the city she lives in, and she just came out of a very abusive marriage and her parents want a lot from her. She is a doctor. Everyone expects her to step into that role of like the family legacy at this hospital. And because there's so much pressure on her, she escapes to Daniel. And Daniel and Alexa are just the perfect couple. There is so much softness within this book, and like this is true romance, but it is so much more than that. I loved the journey, I loved the side characters, and also this is the first one in the Part of Your World trilogy, and every single book in this trilogy is just a masterpiece. So definitely go on and read this winter, and then you can read yours truly, which I recommend just as much. Like I love these books so much. I think this is also a great book to read in winter. And then after that you have Just for the Summer. This one kind of I would consider more of a summer read because it's like just for the summer in the title, but read this during winter, then the spring, and then the summer time. So you're set with Abby Jimenez's books for the next few months, you know? Another romance that I like to recommend for the winter season is The Simple Wild by K.A. Tucker. This is also one of my absolute favorite books. I'm actually holding this one up because again, I lent my copy of the first book, this is the second one, to a friend, and this is a duology, and you basically also have more books, but those ones follow other characters in this world. The first two follow one couple, and I think why this is also great for winter is because it plays in Alaska, and even though I'm pretty sure the first book plays around the summertime, because it is Alaska and it's a very rural area where she goes to, it just feels perfect for a winter read. I don't know. And in this one, Kala goes to Alaska because she wants to reconcile with her dad, who she hasn't seen in like 20 years. And in Alaska, because it's so rural where she lives, they have to like fly in with small planes. And the bus pilot who picks her up is Jonah. And Jonah and her don't get along right from the get-go. It's definitely Grumpy Sunshine. And again, these books, I feel like, are so much more than just a romance. They also deal with other topics, and it's just such a beautiful story. I have so much warmth for this book and love it so much, and definitely something else that I would love to reread at some point. Then my last romance recommendation I have here is The Blonde Identity by Ellie Carter. And this is not just a romance, this definitely has a big suspense element as well, or mystery element. And our main character basically wakes up in the middle of the night in Paris during winter, outside, and she has no recollection of how she got there, but a very, very handsome stranger tells her to stand up and run, and she realizes that people are trying to kill her, but she doesn't really know why. And then there's this stranger who's handsome and wants to help her, but she doesn't know whether or not she can trust him. And yeah, this is a very like cute, fun romance. Because of the plot, you don't focus too much just on the romance, like you have so many other elements, and this is not like a super believable plot, but if you want something more fun and different, then I would definitely recommend this. So now that we rounded up the romance section, I want to add some paranormal romances because I feel like they've become a bit more popular, especially with the book that I'm gonna recommend first, and that is Bride by Ellie Hazelwood. Like, I feel like she kind of made this mainstream, which is incredible, and I really, really appreciate Ellie Hazelwood for doing that. I feel like the opinions for this book and the plot are very different. Like, some say that it's not enough romance, some say it's not enough fantasy, and for me, I feel like this was a lot of romance and was definitely pining for this couple. However, I still think that this is such a fun and awesome read and definitely perfect for the winter time, like perfect escapism. And if you want that kind of, you know, Twilight fan fiction, werewolf, vampires, go to Ellie Hazelwood and Bride. This is also Marriage of Convenience, which made it just the perfect paranormal read for me. And I also really enjoyed the setting because, you know, in Ellie Hazelwood's style, she kind of explained the different species with like scientific reasons, and I just really like that. And you have our main character Misery, which great name for our main vampire, who grew up in like the human world because of like a treaty they have, and now she has to marry the leader of like the werewolves to have peace between these two species as well. Ellie Hazelwood usually writes like one, maybe two spicy scenes in her books, but because of the paranormal element in here, I feel like Even some sniffing and smelling became very intense. And yeah, this definitely has some wild spice in this book. But you know, I feel like winter is the perfect time to spice up your reading. For even more spice is the next paranormal romance, and that is Ice Planet Barbarian by Ruby Dixon. Never thought I would recommend something like this, but I don't recommend this because it's one of the best books I've ever read. This is just such a fun read. Like, if you want something so out there and crazy and wild, and at the same time very, very spicy, I'm telling you, this is so much smut, then you came to the right place. And why I also think this is like the perfect read for winter. They literally land on a planet that is an ice planet. So this is winter in this whole universe. These, I think, 12 girls get abducted by aliens, only to be left on this ice planet by those aliens because I think they have like some trouble with the spaceship and want to collect them later. But the girls go on and explore, and I don't know how many books are in this series, honestly. I'm not gonna read them all, but this follows the first girl who goes out and wants to see, okay, where did we land here? Can we survive here? And she meets the leader of the aliens that live on that planet. Yeah, if you just want something super fun, you know, just escapism. You know, winter gets too much and you want to see other people suffer even more from cold and how they get warm, then read this book. Okay, now I feel like with like the paranormal romances, we kind of ventured into the fantasy section of recommendations, and I have mainly like really cozy fantasies here, but I think overall winter and autumn are just the seasons for fantasies, so whatever fantasy you have on your radar, now's the time to pick them up. The first book I have here, I kind of wished I read during the winter or autumn season, because I read this during summer and I loved this book, but I think reading it during like autumn winter, this would have hit even harder, and that is The Invisible Life by Eddie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. And this book is just so beautiful because it's beautifully written. The story is kind of a little bit sad because we have Eddie LaRue, who basically makes a deal with the devil that she wants to break free because she was born in like 17 something, like I think 1714, so when girls basically didn't really have a choice about their lives, and she wants to have her freedom, so she makes a deal with the devil. But what she doesn't know by making this deal is that she will now live forever, but no one will ever remember her. And she lives like this through the centuries until we go to present day, where she meets someone who all of a sudden does remember her. And this book is just, as I said, so beautifully written. The story, I feel like, is quite unique. There's some beautiful quotes in here. What I also really, really liked is the element of art that plays a big role in here. And I'm not an art person myself, but I think it was just a very great aspect that added to the story and to the characters. And I don't know, just kind of showed me art in a different light. And yeah, I just highly, highly recommend this book. Then I have some duologies that I think are perfect for the winter season. The first one I have here is the Divine Rivals duology by Rebecca Ross. I only have the first book to show you, but both of these books I think are great winter reads because Rebecca Ross has like a very whimsical, very beautiful romantic writing, especially in this book. Like, this book is so romantic, and I think that's why a lot of people love it that much. And the second book is less focused on the romance and more of like the world and the war that is going on in here. Our two main characters, and they're both journalists and they compete for the same job. That's why they're rivals. And what they don't know is that they both own typewriters that connect them to each other. So they write each other letters. It's just something that I feel like you can cozy up with in bed, and yeah, perfect for the winter time. Then I actually read another book by Rebecca Ross, and I didn't even realize until now that I'm gonna give you two Rebecca Ross duology recommendations, but I feel like her writing is just really, really great for the winter time. The other duology I have here is A River Enchanted, and I actually only read the first book so far. This book is just like coziness in a book. The stakes are definitely not high, and it's not a fast-driven plot. It's much more slower, but therefore, to me, it just feels more cozy. And in this one, you follow different POVs. They have to solve the mystery of little girls going missing, and they think that the spirits have something to do with it. So Jack, who had to live on the main island, is summoned back to kind of sing to the spirits, because that's a way to like lure them in and talk to them. And yeah, it's just a very like atmospherical read. And I just want to say that because Divine Rivals by Rebecca Ross is so popular, especially for the romantasy element, this is not a romantasy. This has a little romance in here, but don't go into this duology and think you get the same like experience than in the Divine Rivals duology. But I think if you like her writing, then you would also enjoy this book. Another fantasy that I just really want to recommend to you guys is the Powerless trilogy, because you have time now to catch up with the first 2 books that are out and also the novella in between. So then we can all experience together when the 3rd book, Fearless, comes out, I think in April. Oh my god, I just did my 2025 new releases, but I think, yeah, it's April when Fearless comes out. And this little trilogy is just so fun. It's definitely very fast-paced. I feel like there's always something going on. It's the opposite of the book that I just recommended. This has trials. This is kind of compared to Hunger Games. I love the quotes in here. I love the banter. This is romantasy. I love Kai and Peyton so much, and I just need the 3rd book. And if you haven't picked up the Powerless books yet, why? Like, do it now, do it this winter, so we can all then read Fearless together. My last fantasy recommendation is also cozy fantasy, and it is Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies, or her series in total, because there are 2 books out yet, and we're going to get the 3rd one, I think late February, so also during winter, so you can catch up with the first 2. And I didn't love the first one too much, but that might have been also because, as I said, I'm a mood reader, and I don't think I read it at a time where I appreciated what this book is. But when I read the second one, I loved that book. But why I think this is also great to read in winter is that the setting here is also winter, because she goes to one of the Scandinavian countries, I think, to study the fae there, because Emily wants to do an encyclopedia of the fairies, and she's a professor, and those fairies are the ones that are like least researched for, so she goes up there, and her rival from university actually follows her, that she doesn't really like, but once things get a bit more complicated, she kind of appreciates it more. The setting is like a snowy landscape as well, so I think this is just great to read during winter. Right, that brings us to our thrillers and mysteries, and I don't have a lot here, but the ones that I do recommend, like, they're one of my absolute favorites, like so good. Actually, all of them 5 stars. So even though they're not a lot, there are some of the best out there. The first one I want to recommend is No Exit by Taylor Adams. This is just such a good thriller. So in this book, again, wintry setting, our main character wants to drive home to her mom, and there's a big like snowstorm coming up. So she goes to one of the rest stops, and there are a few other strangers, which already I feel like just sounds like such a panicky moment if you're stuck there with strangers. And when she goes out to like grab something from her car, she sees that in one of the other cars is a little girl held in a cage. And she's like, I'm gonna get you out, but also one of those people in that rest stop kidnapped a little girl. So that is the story, and I just really like how fast-paced this was. Like, this is a thriller that delivered on being thrilling. 100% recommend No Exit. It's one of my absolute favorite thrillers. The next book I want to recommend, I feel like, is more of a mystery, but this is so much more than that, and that is The Ballerinas by Rachel Kapelk-Dall. This book is incredible. When you follow 3 girls throughout their years becoming ballerinas, but you see in the present day that is like several years after they become like prima ballerinas. One of them actually went and left the Paris Opera to become a choreographer, and something happened back then that you don't really know at the beginning, but you get little hints. And then you also have the current timeline, and what I think also this book did really well, how friendships shape you when you're younger, but also how life changes you, and that can change friendships. I feel like this is such a masterpiece on how we humans act, and all in the setting of ballet. I definitely want more people to talk about this, and I feel like because Christmas is the time where a lot of people go to the ballet, that yeah, this is just a great read for the winter time. But yeah, definitely recommend this if you want a mystery, but at the same time also just so much more, and feel very empowered by women. My next recommendation is from a series that I recently read, and I just can't stop shutting up about it, and that is the Natural series. I love this series so much. This is a YA mystery, but I will tell you, like, from where you start and in the last book, what happened there is so wild. Like, it is such a good YA mystery or thriller. I think the things that happen in there pretty crazy, even though you don't get like the details because it is YA. It's still like the plot is just so good and it's so fast paced. Like, you just fly through these books because you have short chapters. There's always something happening, and this is basically Criminal Minds but in a YA form, because you have these teenagers that are all gifted with like either lie detecting or reading emotions or profiling people without having that like learned professionally, and just because they had some kind of traumatic past, and they all get approached by the FBI to get trained and work on cold cases. It's just so binge worthy, and I feel like especially in the winter time when everything feels kind of slow, you have very long dark days, especially when you kind of feel like you maybe getting into a slump. These are the books that get you out of a book slump, I'm sure of it. And yeah, just highly recommend this series by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. This brings us to my own TBR, and it's very short because yeah, I want to mood read a lot, but the things that I do want to read in winter is, first of all, The Last Word by Taylor Adams. As I said, No Exit is one of my favorite thrillers and definitely want to read more from the author. And I really like the concept of The Last Word, our main character that leaves a 1-star review on that book, and then the author starts to stalk the 1-star reviewer, which just very scary concept. Then I want to read the One Dark Window duology, so also the second one, because this is a gothic fantasy, and as I said, I love fantasies during the winter time, and I feel like also the gothic setting just kind of screams winter. Like, look at this cover. I feel like this is just very, you know, wintry vibes. I know next to nothing about this duology, which I'm very glad because I like to go blindly in this. What I do know that it has like a very unique magical system, which I really like, and I do hope that there's some romance in here. I'm not so sure, but yeah, very excited for this gothic fantasy. Next up I have The Atlas 6 by Olivier Blake, and I think this is also great for winter because this is also fantasy, and I believe this is also like dark academia, which I also associate with like the autumn winter season, and I've been wanting to read this for a very long time, but I'm just very intimidated by the writing because I feel like a lot of people say that it is beautiful but also a bit different. And yeah, I just saw that there are some pictures in here which I love, so that made me already more excited. And I also don't know a lot about the plot. 6 extraordinary magicians, 5 chances to win 1 secret society. So that's really all I know. But yeah, I'm just very excited to get to this one. And then I actually have another thriller that I really want to read, and that is Rock, Paper, Scissors by Alice Feeney. And I'm gonna show you the other cover that I actually wanted for this book. Once you see that, then you know, like, you can just read this in winter, right? Like, the cover just gives winter vibes. And I know that might seem ridiculous to some people, but to me, I don't know, I'm a mood reader. I see that cover, I'm like, I'm gonna read this during the winter time, because I also haven't read anything else by Alice Feeney, but I really want to try her out because I feel like she's quite a popular thriller author. And this, I think, is about a married couple. 10 years of marriage, 10 years of secret, an anniversary they'll never forget. Adam and Emily are spending the weekend in the Scottish Highlands. Oh, I love the Scottish Highlands. I feel like that's also a great setting for a winter read. The remote location is perfect for what they have planned, but when their romantic trip takes a dark turn, they both start to wonder, can they trust the one they're with? Okay, very excited for that one. So yeah, that is my little winter TBR. Obviously I'm going to read a lot more during winter, but I just don't want to overwhelm myself with books I'm going to tell you that I'm going to read and then might not end up reading. We'll see, but these are the ones I definitely want to get to. And I hope you got a few good recommendations for your next winter read. We're slowly approaching the end of Bookmas, which is crazy, but I hope you enjoyed this. Give this video a like and also subscribe for more bookish content, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!